June of 1982 in Brussels, and The Cure is about to break up. It's the final tour date in support of their fourth LP, Pornography. Maligned by critics, the album has led to sparsely attended shows and fans generally confused by the grinding darkness of the band's new music.
I mean, we've made Pornography, which I'm really proud of, and no one else liked it.
This heavy atmosphere, along with the growing reliance on drugs and alcohol, has added to the internal tensions within the group. A few nights before, things boiled over into a fistfight between frontman Robert Smith and bass player Simon Gallup. So as Smith pondered the end of the project that he had been working on since he was 16 years old, he decided to lean in. Let's make this a memorable goodbye. Prior to their encore, he got up and announced that for the first time ever at a Cure show, he would play drums. Furious, Gallup grabbed Smith's guitar, leaving drummer Lowell Tolhurst to take up the bass. The show eventually devolved into an onstage shouting match with Smith throwing his drumsticks at Gallup. That night felt like death, Tolhurst would write. It was the death of that version of The Cure. Fortunately, though, it wasn't the end for the band. The Cure went on to have a celebrated career that has spanned decades and styles, with their influence appreciating more and more over time.
Disintegration is the best album ever!
They've released several classic albums, a surprising number of hit singles, and against all odds, in 2024, 45 years into their career, just put out one of their best songs to date with Alone. At the center of it all is the band's only consistent member,
The best songwriter to come out of England, Robert Smith!
Smith's unmistakable voice and songwriting style has guided The Cure through endless genre experiments and mood swings, all while keeping them grounded to a rude aesthetic that is distinctly their own.
The Cure are one of the most heartbreakingly excellent rock bands the world has ever been lucky enough to enjoy.
And all of this started with the success of the band's first two singles, Killing an Arab and Boys Don't Cry. Looking back though, Smith still sees the album Three Imaginary Boys, which both of these singles were recorded during the sessions for, as a failure.
I felt like a pawn, I felt like I was being used.
Recording for the LP began when the band were only teenagers. Capitalizing on this lack of experience, their label and engineer took control of the album production, pushing for a more commercial sound.
We didn't really have that much control over what we were doing. It was very much fiction, and Chris Parry was trying to mould us into this sharp, new young three-piece.
Smith later described the results as very superficial, and he was determined to proceed to their next record on his own terms.
If I'd known then, all of this would have been completely different.
To support Three Imaginary Boys, the band hit the road with Susie and the Banshees, with Smith pulling double duty, acting as their guitar player as well. The Banshees' sound was a massive influence on the young members of The Cure, with Smith later saying, "I was blown away by how powerful I felt playing that kind of music. It was so different to what we were doing with The Cure." Accordingly, Smith began to write darker, more atmospheric material. And learning from his experience on Three Imaginary Boys, he was the co-producer on 17 Seconds. A grim and wiry set of songs, the album was a noted departure into darker terrain for the band. Smith later said, "We honestly felt we were creating something that no one else had done." Despite its bleak aesthetic, the album spawned the hit single of Forest, which reached number 31 on the charts. The band followed this success with 1981's Faith.
Cure, a track called Primary, which is included on their new album, which is called Faith, which is out at the moment.
A further evolution of the band's sound, the album spanned from the frenetic Primary to the stark title track. While it was a success both commercially and critically, the oppressive nature of the band's new sound had begun to seep into its members, with Smith later saying they were stuck in a ghoulish rut. And it was from these depths that they would begin producing the darkest, most unyielding work of their career.
It's called Pornography.
So what is it that makes Pornography so much darker than everything else The Cure has ever done? On 17 Seconds and Faith, the band crafted a sound that was distinctly their own. On their new material, they wanted to marry that aesthetic with an uncompromisingly dark approach to their creative process. This had always included prolific drinking habits, but the band had also started experimenting with LSD.
Float with it, man. You know, let it carry you down the stream.
In addition to this, the band had decided to throw themselves even further into the void with their viewing habits. We immersed ourselves in a more sordid side of life, and it did have a very detrimental effect on everyone in the group. We got hold of some very disturbing films and imagery to kind of put us in the mood, Smith told Rolling Stone. Well, Smith never clarified the nature of this material. In an article on the band in Flexi Pop magazine, he described trying to rent snuff films from his neighbor's shady video store. There were also outside factors that amplified the intensity of the new music they were producing as well. The first being that Smith, Tolhurst, and Gallup were constantly together. They were playing over 200 shows a year, and to save money during the production of their album, they were all living in the Friction Records office. While in the earlier days of the band, this may have formed a bond between the three musicians, by this time hidden frustrations and resentments were taking over.
The whole thing had become too intense and very depressing, and just everything seemed to be wrong.
We were living in insanity together 24/7, said Tolhurst. These elements all collided when the band joined producer Phil Thornalley at RIK Studios. Working from January to April of 1982, the sessions became a living manifestation of all these grimy elements. I know for a fact that we recorded some of the songs in the toilets to get a really horrible feeling, said Smith. The band added to this by deciding not to take out their trash during the sessions. Instead, they opted to build a mountain of empty beer cans in the corner of the studio. Smith also mentioned losing every friend he had during this period because of his behavior, saying that he channeled all the self-destructive elements of my personality into doing something. All of this funneled into every element of the album's sound and songwriting, making it unique from all of their other work. While much of The Cure's later melancholy would have hints of hopefulness, Pornography's darkness is grinding. It's singular and punishing. While it's undoubtedly one of the best things the band has ever done, in a career defined by surprising stylistic twists and turns, it's their only album that stays so consistently bleak. Even the production of the record feels cold. Harsh echoing drums sit at the center of the mix, as snaky bass lines, linear guitar riffs, and synth pads support Smith's scowling vocals. While the band has said they were influenced by the Psychedelic Furs and Susie and the Banshees, Pornography isn't like anything that came before it. The record starts with the line, "It doesn't matter if we all die," and ends with the only slightly more optimistic, "I must fight the sickness, find a cure." The rest of the lyrics are summed up well by the phrase in the figurehead, "Visions of hell." A charcoal face bites my hand, a shallow grave, a monument of a ruined age, dancing in my pocket, worms eat my skin. It's one thing to talk about the elements that make Pornography what it is, but listen to the effect when everything comes together on the album's title track. It's just dismal, which makes it even more fascinating that Smith was only a year away from writing this. But we'll get back to that. Once the band completed Pornography, it shared a similar fate to many other uncompromising and accomplished works. The critics hated it. Rolling Stone said the album was the oral equivalent of a bad toothache. Sounds magazine called the band's new music dryly meaningless, and The Village Voice just encouraged Robert Smith to cheer up.
I just don't think they got it.
Many of the band's fans reacted the same way. Most of the shows in support of Pornography were undersold, and when performed live, the new material received a lukewarm reception from those who attended. That became a source of discontent for us, Tolhurst told Quietus. In a band already existing on frayed ends, this atmosphere only added to the decay. Soon after, Gallup and Smith got into a fistfight over a bar tab in Strasbourg. They both flew home the next day, but decided to come back to finish the final shows, the last being in Brussels, where they all switched instruments. After that, the tour was done, and at that point, so was The Cure. Defeated and exhausted, they all went their separate ways. By 1982, rumors were spreading that The Cure had broken up. Smith seemed focused on his work with Susie and the Banshees, and there was no sign of a follow-up to Pornography. In 1983, though, after some prodding from their label, Smith and Tolhurst started releasing strange pop singles like Love Cats and Let's Go to Bed. And before long, a new lineup was announced that didn't include Simon Gallup on the bass. Miles away from the black dirges of Pornography, this music was the start of a new chapter for the band. Robert Smith was 19 when he recorded Three Imaginary Boys. It feels like a lifetime later that he was recording the band's fourth album, Pornography. He was only 23 years old, though. That's remarkable. At that young age, he had already been through more than most musicians experience in their whole career. Fittingly, after the band melted down at that show in Brussels, he did what a lot of people his age do. He kind of took the equivalent of a gap year.
So I just sort of disappeared on it. I took a tent and went camping around, dossing around England.
When he came back, he seemed to have processed both what he and his band had been through and allowed himself to imagine a path forward. He opened himself up to a larger spectrum of vision and emotion than the submerging levels of doom on the band's past 3 records. Pornography was an exorcism of that era. Although they barely survived it, they became something new because of it. Where at first the reviews were bleak, a cultural retcon began to take place that asserted Pornography was a brilliant, pioneering work. The album still sounds sinister and haunted without any trace of camp. Its intensity has never dulled in the decades since its release. And while personally it was one of the low points of the band's career, they still look back on the results fondly. It's my favorite Cure album, and it's the pinnacle of that 3-piece lineup, claimed Tolhurst. Well, Smith said, "I think it's one of the best things we've ever done."